Yo, what's poppin', everybody?
Namaste. Grand Rising.
Namaste, namaste. What's going on? It is Friday, and you know what time it is? It's time for no particular reason.
It's Friday again. It's Saturday, Sunday. What? So let me just tell you, Nana would sing that song to me all the time, and I hate that song. So now every time somebody says it's Friday, it's stuck in my head, and I'm like, you did me so dirty. How you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing well. How are you both doing?
We're doing fabulous. We're really honored to have you on the show. Welcome, welcome.
I'm
I
grateful.
really am so honored. And as always, we love to defer to our guest and sharing whatever comes up for you, whatever you're inspired to start the show off with, if you're so inspired.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
I
that
know,
could
no
go,
pressure.
that could go in many different directions.
Let's
Let's do
Um,
do
it
it.
yeah, I mean, my heart is always on unconditional love and burnout, but frankly, I am a extra dimensional and paranormal experiencer and have been for many years. And today I have had literally like 11 sightings just in like sequence leading up to this event today. And I was like,
Just today?
I mean, it's been getting more and more and more frequent, but I'm having a huge increase and I'm in Brooklyn and I'm seeing these from my second floor window. These things they all look different. They're dropping things, they're receiving things. I'm slow mowing, I'm looking in. It's a fascinating time right now. It's a fascinating time. I know that I focus on teaching looking in, but I also focus on looking around you, looking up, paying attention to what is going on. Because also when we go within, if we get locked into within and we get focused on I'm an island, then we can forget about the people that are around us. And so there's this balance. And maybe that's
That's right.
what it's really
That's
about
right.
today.
I love that you brought that up, Jamie. So I was journaling earlier, and it came to me. I'm like, for me, do I enjoy being able to just sit in my chair and drop into peace and unconditional love? Right? Which I do, because it's just like you just sit and you're like blissed out. Or, do I also appreciate the times where that journey to blissed out state, like that peace, is arduous, meaning it takes work. Like you really gotta focus, willpower, and effort to get to that space. And I love the whole journey because all of it is unfolding in like this gift, rather than me thinking that one way of experience things is better than another. And it's the same for like this spiritual journey. I think so often we think we need to be locked on this island, but you can experience just as much in connection with others. In fact, I love co-creating. That's my superpower. So
It is definitely one of your superpowers. Yeah, it's absolutely a balance. It is so important to go within, but we don't even realize often that we need to go within until we focus on what's around us. And there were times where I burnt out because I was so deeply focused within. And while it was something that I needed to do for me at the time, it brought me into this space where I actually pushed people away without even realizing it because I was just focused on my own journey of what was going on within me. And I was like, this is what's important. I need to go within. And it is super, super important because I do believe that everything from many perspectives, is all within us. And typically the answers that we are looking for are within us as well. However, we're not here alone. And we are part of a larger collective, and we are on a planet with other energies and other living beings and other experiences. And if we just focus on what's inside, we're missing out. we're missing out on our growth and our development. And in fact, our solo loyalty does not serve our entire collective oneness, not one that's
I
exclusive.
love that you talk about spiritual burnout. So I can go down the rabbit hole of like getting lost in the sauce of studying hermetics and studying ancient texts and stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm like, what the hell? And I'll feel so like what I love to do is I switch from really spiritual crazy stuff to wholesome romance books, and my kids laugh all the time. They're like, "Mom, like, yeah," but I'm like, I need that like light, easy, like, okay, it's not it can't be that serious. Like, it's not that serious. And I was sharing with somebody yesterday on the show Bright Side Chronicles. We were talking about joy, like we're just supposed to be in joy, and that spiritual journey can really unintentionally pull you so far away from joy into this logical trying to understand space that it's counterproductive to even be doing the work in the first place.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I think that could create a different kind of persona into somebody, like, oh, I am this spiritual person now, and I got to do my spiritual practices a certain way or in certain time, and or because I'm spiritual, I'm above everybody else, and you are like below because you're not as much spiritual and all those other things. So I think everything is the way it is, and finding the balance is the best way to go. And, and that's my opinion.
Well,
But I really vibe with the sightings, though. I'll tell you that.
I know
Like
you do.
I'm really excited. I'm reading some channel materials from like Acturians, and they're like, "Oh yeah, now we're gonna lower down our vibration, and you're gonna be able to see us if you meant to see us." And I'm like, "Sweet."
So uh Jamie and Yanko, given that like I don't, that's not my experience, which is cool. I talk to Yanko about this all the time. Why don't you explain to our listening audience, like in a little bit more detail, what that means? Because for like I know, because I talk to you guys and a lot of different people, but for somebody who may be just being stepping into mindfulness or something, that they might have no idea what it is that you guys are alluding to.
Well, what I would say is, depending on where you are at, both in your interest and desire, and where you are at in your frequency and development and in your own human journey, which is divine and perfect for you, you may or may not be someone who will choose to have these experiences or really allow yourself or be allowed to have these kinds of experiences. There is no right or wrong or better than or less than. There's nothing that's wrong with you if you choose not to have these experiences, if you're not having these experiences. To put it gently, which is, I mean, the most gentle way that I know how to put it is that there are many different theories and beliefs around how long non terrestrial beings have experienced Earth and have been involved with humanity. And for quite a few years now, I have been experiencing everything from the paranormal through to more recent, probably in like the last 5, 6 years, being aware that I'm experiencing extra dimensional experiences. And this can be anything from having your clairsenses activated and getting communications that you're feeling or that you're hearing or that you're actually seeing. There are many different ways to have connection communication. And, in recent months, it really blew up on the news. Suddenly, everyone started to pay attention, partly because the government has disclosed a lot of information and will be disclosing more information that alluded to all of these projects, or literally stated, like these congressional hearings where they're They're literally saying we have these biologics, we've done this reversal, we have ships, we've had like all of these things that are true that have been hidden are being revealed. And as they are, people more and more and more of the larger collective that hasn't been experiencing this for decades, long before I was even in this lifetime, are now starting to have a lot of experiences. And then a few months ago, right, we started to have a lot of the news coverage of drones in Jersey. And from that moment on, it was like suddenly the echo chamber that I was speaking into of virtually no one caring and telling me that I was losing my mind. Now everyone is starting to wake up to this possibility, and we're seeing more and more, and we're asking questions, which is healthy. It's
Mm-hmm.
healthy to ask questions. It's healthy to be curious. It's healthy to be skeptical. I firmly believe that there's science and spiritualism at play and much in between. And there's a lot of narratives, like everything else in humanity, of major excitement, like Yanko and I are experiencing, and then also people who are feeling very scared,
Yep.
and everything in between. My personal experience at large has been very positive, even in things that I may have thought from an outer perspective might seem even a little invasive, but they're things that I do feel inherently inside that I've consented to. I have very, very, very rarely had an experience where I felt very uneasy. And I think it really is important for all of us to search within and focus maybe less on what's happening in the news. I'm not saying ignore things. There's a lot on social media. There's a lot of content you can watch, but you got to be careful because there's a lot of AI content. There's a lot of content that people are editing out. And then there's people who are passionate and want to share to help. And I've been called to share. And so I have started to go back to sharing these experiences, and you'll have your journey with it. But I find it super fun and interesting, and I
Well,
don't feel scared.
I want to jump in for the listening audience. Here's the thing, what I love that Jamie said, which is on point, is you got to go within, right? Like if you're looking externally, you lose sight of what feels good for you in the first place because you're literally a slave to everybody else's understanding, experiences, ideology, fear, or love, or anything in between. And you cannot know unconditional love until you unconditionally love yourself. And I said that yesterday. And that means loving the hot mess express. That means loving the bitch that comes out at your kid when you're cranky and they're coming at your neck. Like it's loving the whole. And when you do that, you can be open to all these experiences and recognize, oh, that kind of feels good. And lastly, that everything in between, like from fear to love, for me, it's just curiosity. Like Yanko will sit here and go on a 10-minute tangent about technology. I'm like, oh, really? That's cool. Me and technology, we have a relationship that means that I do what I can with it and I'm good with it, but I'm curious and I'm intrigued by the fact that Yanko gets excited over algorithms and workflows. But it doesn't mean that I have to ever experience it. It doesn't make it right or wrong, good or bad. It just is what it is.
It doesn't take long for something to excite me though. I can get as much excited about aliens as I'm getting about workflows and anything else in between. But the bottom line is that they're there, and most of them are getting with direct communication, avoiding fear, and that's the big thing. So
Well, it's so funny.
you're not gonna get contacted or anything if you're in a fear kind of mindset, because energies are like, if they're in the love and you in the fear, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, they don't
you
want to be
know
right. And
right.
the people, like there's somebody who is in my immediate family who for my whole life, there's no aliens, like, and right, at first this person scared the crap out of me. I mean, they were in a position of power, and now I'm like, wow, like the fear is so evident, right? And that's cool, like no judgment. But when people are, this is what I would suggest to anybody out there. If you experience somebody resistant to anything, whether it's you stepping into pole dancing or you going down this path with Jamie and Yanko around experiencing connection with extraterrestrial beings or light or speaking light language, or I don't know, going back to school, right? Understand that that's just coming from a lens of fear, like their own internal stories that are inhibiting their ability to show up for you. But that doesn't mean they don't care and they don't love you. It's just their own work that they have to do. Additionally, if you find yourself in resistance to anything at all, whether it's a hug from somebody, right? If you tried to hug me 20 years ago, you and me were fighting because I'm like, step off my personal space. Or whether it is, Jamie, who is a Reiki master working energetically within your body to help release blocks, right? If there's resistance, instead of judging that resistance, get curious. Oh, what's coming up for me? In that, you'll understand that there's just programming, beliefs, behaviors, stories that have been embedded in your psyche that are causing this response. And when you examine those, you decide you release them, you work through them, and then you're open to more possibilities, more experiences.
Well
And
said.
here is a one comment that came through Facebook. I'm gonna share it.
Michelle,
Very
that's
true.
real talk right there. Yeah. Michelle, talk about, she's somebody who has been deeply seated in spirituality. And it's interesting because, I was talking, I think it was you and me, Jamie, right? Yesterday,
Yeah.
there's so much dogma in religion. There's so much dogma in religion, and when, like, for me, I was so curious, I was able to read the texts in the spiritual scriptures to strip down to the basic fundamental language of all of them, which is exactly what Jamie and Yanko say all the time: unconditional love. It's love. There's nobody coming down to pick you apart, judge you, condemn you. Really, believe it or not, it's your own beliefs and stories that have condemned you to suffering in this experience. That's like truth. Um, but to your point, Michelle, like when we are seeped into this dogma that causes us to believe that we're better than, separate from, more knowledgeable about, we've just lost sight of the very reason we step into spirituality in the first place, which is to connect with oneness, to connect with the collective consciousness of all of us, right?
Absolutely agree. And Michelle, what you're speaking to, and Kerri, what you were alluding to earlier, really, for me, it comes down to the ego journey. And the reality is that the ego journey can present in a number of different ways. It doesn't have to just present from the spiritual lens. It also can happen, because of that dogma. And it can be present whether it's in the, more the sort of the box of religion, or the what I perceive to be a wider box that can include religion, within spirituality as a whole. And it's a powerful experience to go through, because it's very humbling, especially looking back, to realize that what happened was you were initially so disempowered and so drained, and then suddenly you're like, holy shit, I'm a divine co-creator. I can decide how I want to do this, how I want to manifest this. I'm in control of this. And suddenly it's its own high, right? It's an adrenaline, because suddenly you are embodying more of your full self, and that builds confidence. And when it comes to a spiritual journey, that can happen very rapidly. It can feel like it happened almost in a blink. And when you have such a rapid shift like that, it can kind of shock your system in a way where the ego activates. And let me tell you something, there is nothing wrong or right with having an ego journey. I personally believe that every human on some level is going through an ego journey. I believe that we don't have an ego that's broken, and I don't believe that the ego is something to remove like I once did, which feels like so long ago. But that was just like years ago where I was like, oh man, the ego is not something good to have because this, that, and the other, the pridefulness, this and that. And the reality is the ego is perfect as it is. The ego needs to be educated and honored. And the ego really is the unhealed inner child.
Yep.
And that's the game. So Michelle, what you're speaking to totally happens, and I want to remind everyone that no matter what journey you're taking, there's plenty of space for muchness, and we can all get out of balance because in humanity we ebb and flow.
And I also think out of balance is the opportunity to go deeper into those unhealed wounds, right? But I want Yanko and Jamie, because something that came up for me is another individual that's very, very close to me and my immediate family doesn't understand the concept of ego, right? Because when I hear people say evil, I'm like, I really don't believe in evil. It's just that ego operating from that really deep-seated fear. However, I would be curious to hear what both of you have to say in regards to understanding what ego is within our higher selves.
You want to go first?
Yanko, would you like? No,
Okay.
please go ahead. I feel like I've been monopolizing the
conversation, Jamie.
No, this is great. I love it. To me, if you like go down to the nitty gritty, when you become as a human, in that say you don't believe in a soul or anything, you just become this baby. You're given. Your parents give you your name. They tell you you're so and so. They give you the language. They teach you this and that, and then through all this programming, you become to create this persona that you think you are, and that's becoming the ego. But then it doesn't stop there, because it's not like a finite one, because there could be like very many different variations based on what kind of um, things you're engaged in. So, for example, if you're driving a car and that time you're the taxi driver or the car driver, if half your time you're cooking, then you become the chef or the cook, and then you have totally different persona for that environment based on the actions you creating, because those are false identities that you take, because you take that as you start to become and think, oh, this is me, or this is my house, or this is my car. You start claiming things, and that becomes the ego personality. That's how I understand it.
I agree. I think that the ego is something that is art in a sense. It's forever changing, and I think that it's something that it's a co-creation from moment one, and at the same time, there becomes this very big milestone once you realize, I am the artist. And so that process is powerful. And listen, a balance of pride. Look, if you are an unconditionally loving person in this world and you are doing your best every moment of every day to be the best human for yourself and for those you love in the world, that's something to be proud of. Why not? Right? There's anything can go to, an extreme. But having the confirmation, feeling good in yourself about doing what you feel feels good, there's nothing wrong with feeling good about that. So the ego journey isn't always about feeling
In fact, I
bad.
would
And
argue it's not at all about feeling bad. Like, I think about the Marianne Williamson quote, which I love, and our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. We ask ourselves who are we to be extraordinary, but really who are we not? Now, this is where I really want the listening audience to understand. I know that I am limitless and I freaking love myself. I will tell you, I think I'm the bee's knees, man. I am like, but I also think that Jamie's the bee's knees and Yanko's the bee's knees. And the homeless guy, Daniel, that I walk up to and give a hug to or hold his hand and check in with him, he's the bee's knees. The difference is I think we're all exceptional, and I want to highlight everybody, which is why I have so many shows where I talk to really cool people. And that's the difference, is not diminishing. I honestly think ego can get you in this false trap of, oh, let me diminish my light. Oh, I'm not gonna say that. No, you know what? I am hella good at public speaking. I'm really good at interviewing people. I'm really good at showing up and making a fool of myself in public and not caring, right? That is just as powerful. But I also think it's recognizing that everybody has these innate abilities and gifts. And I believe, and I know Jamie and Yanko believe, that now that we have understood and established that connection with ourselves, it's our responsibility to help other people establish that connection within themselves wherever they're at, so that they can recognize their own superpower and their own limitless beauty that they have to offer the world in any given moment wherever they're at on their journey.
I th-
absolutely, we all have our special.
yeah, I think it's more of a recognizing that you're not a separate uh, being from like the divine in everything else, or whatever way you want to use it, like the universe, or you're not a separate thing out of it. um, yeah, we're going through those processes where we're starting to believe that we're separate beings and we're having our own things, and mistakenly claim different things for our own, and then we suffer when we lose them because we feel that we're losing part of ourself, because that becomes part of us. Like if this is my car and if it crashes, then on a deeper level you fear that you lost a part of yourself when that car crashed, but it's not really that. And when you start going back to remembering who you are, and that you're not this or that or this other thing or whatever, then life becomes a lot more happy place to be in, because you're not gonna fight with yourself. That's like harming yourself. You know what I mean? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what humanity has done. We've continuously over time both hurt and helped. And what has happened is this balance, which has always existed, whether we like the balance that's happened or not, gets skewed and focused into we've only hurt each other. And it's absolutely not true. And it's proven on this show, and it's proven on all of other Kerri shows and Yanko shows and my shows, and every other platform. There's always love, and there's always a way to tap into that energy and to experience that joy regardless of what is going on. Because as much as there can be a war, there's also a puppy that got adopted. There's also someone who had a baby. There's also someone who won their first race. There's always someone who started a new business within their purpose. There's always someone who um, cried because they saw a beautiful sunset. There's all of these amazing things that are happening all the time. And when you release this need to place something in a box of right or wrong, or better than or less than, or good or bad, and you create these extremes and say, this is all there is, as opposed to the spectrum of experience, it's
It's so
free.
free. It feels so good. It feels so good. And it's interesting because I think about why I was called to do the show, The Bright Side Chronicles. Fear has to make more noise. And it's so interesting because I was listening to something yesterday where somebody was saying, I always question when somebody shaves their head or wears these big garments to represent their spirituality, right? And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, the reality is love just is. It unfolds quietly in these small nuances in the, oh, Jamie came to my heart, so I'm gonna sing him a song randomly. Nobody's ever gonna know, but that's true love, right? But then fear, because it operates at such a lower energy, we've got to highlight that, man. Every show's got to highlight it. We've got to feed that puppy. And so it is this is where I work with people. You get to choose. Listen, if you want to watch cops and reinforce the fact that a group of Black people are scared and angry and crack addicted, whatever, who are going to come rob you, I can't take that away from you. But I know after I realized that was a belief in my head, I was going to go hang out with a whole bunch of people who are going to infuse me in love, feed me soul food, and teach me that, oh, white girl can eat spicy food if I take it in moderation. Right? Like, but really, and so it's just showing up and asking yourself, right? And this comes back to what I was journaling earlier today. How am I feeling right now? Am I feeling unsettled, in like distressed, uneasy? Or am I feeling into love? Am I really excited? Am I overwhelmed with the fact that in 15 minutes, once I figure out my contact issue, which really happened, I told Yanko before the show, I'm going to get to talk to two of my favorite people and shoot the breeze and see where and then I make that choice to shift into, and sometimes it takes me an hour, guys, and sometimes it comes instantly, but I'm never willing to give up the moment by moment decision to find my way back home to unconditional love, because that is where we all reside, guys. I can't share in Yanko's fears or Jamie's or anybody else's because it's made up. So we cannot connect on those levels. However, we all come from love, so it is a felt sense, and that's why we're attracted to love, because we are loved and we know it, and we can share in that experience any moment we surrender ourselves into it.
I was
1000%.
gonna say, usually you project whatever your beliefs are, and that's how you co-create, because again, you're not a separate being. So if you're sharing that kind of energy and that kind of crowd and people you're hanging out with, guess what? That's what's gonna become your reality.
Mhm.
So in a certain point, you have to decide what do you want to have as an experience here as a human. Do you want to experience that or this? I mean, there's no wrong way of either, but one it's more nicer than the other, I think.
It's definitely more
It's
fun.
more
Yeah.
fun, and it's so unexpected, right? Like 2-3 years ago, I would never have met Jamie. I couldn't have met Jamie because I wasn't in the space to receive Jamie. Oh, my homeboy Justin would. That Justin, these two people on this side, you got to meet. Both of you guys would love his story. It is. But that's the thing. Who could imagine Justin would pop in to say fuego? Like, you can't until you're opened to those possibilities, right? Like, you just can't. And your perspective creates your reality. So I'm going to tell you right now, all those years that I believed that I was a worthless piece of crap, that I had nothing to offer the world, that I was bad, right? Because I believed that, my reality fed me those stories. I had people in my life who would feed me, oh, you're not good enough, you didn't make the grade, not because of them, but because of my perspective about myself. So I had to free myself from that perspective. Otherwise, I would be sitting in suffering still, doing this cycle of just misery, which I'm all set. I'm like, I like this dance way better.
Yeah, I bet you do. and and I want to point out that even that, awareness of, well, if I don't change this, then I can't have that. You still chose, because you could have stayed in suffering. You could have. Your human experience would have gone on, and who knows how that would have, you know, actually opened up, right? There are plenty of people that go from suffering to empowered and joyful. I'm one of them. Once you realize that that is a perspective and that you can shift that, then it feels like there's a light at the end of the
Mhm.
tunnel,
Well,
right? And the sharing of that opens up that door
Yeah.
for others.
not only that, but imagine this scenario. If we're in the multiple timelines, there are timelines where you're miserable your entire life, and there's timelines where you're in between, and there's timelines when you're like happy, joyful your entire life, and so on. So by choosing in each moment, you're not creating, but you're shifting and you're changing. Because if you get to a point where you start, which is happening more often now, you start having dreams with your close ones, but in a certain different setting, in a different timeline, then the more that happens, the more you're going to realize that, yeah, I do have the choice, or this could have been that way if I were going down that road and end up having that timeline instead. How about that?
Oh, oh, 100%. It happens all the time. And, thinking about those who may be sort of blown away by that context or, skeptical, which is totally fair, think about deja vu, right? When we have these moments of deja vu and it feels like we have lived something before, and then if you're like me, then you've probably had double deja vu, which means that while you are having deja vu, you have deja vu about that having of deja vu, which is really trippy. Yeah, oh my god, it was happening. I think Kerri was telling you about that yesterday. Like, it happened to me yesterday and the day before, and I take those moments simply and I say, wow, thank you for showing me that I'm on my path. Thank you for showing me that I'm exactly where I need to be. And I always pull some powerful insights. When these mind blowing things happen, I think that there's this human innate desire to understand for our comfortability, right? That's how we feel secure and stable, regardless of what's happening, that we understand why this has happened and what this means and what this does. There is another way to look at it, though, which is what is. And it's happening. And the question is, do you feel good about it? Do you want it to happen again or not? And then act accordingly and shift your
Oh,
beliefs
that's
accordingly.
so good. And it's so for anybody out there listening, I want to give you a tangible example that just came up to me about being in flow, just being in love. The other day, me and Nana driving, we're chilling with, I mean, we can sit in dead silence and not do anything. And all of a sudden I looked at him, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm interviewing my twin sister on a radio show next week. And he looked at me, he's like, I was just thinking, wow, it's really cool. Kerri's interviewing her twin sister on a radio show next week, right? That is when you're just in flow and you can't make this stuff up. And I think the minute you try to understand, put a concept to it, it loses its power. And that's why, Jamie and I were talking yesterday around some of these great thought leaders, these philosophers and things. Alan Watts is somebody who comes to mind, who I love. I've studied a lot of his work and it was brilliant. But when you try to understand something so vast and obscure and unknowable, it's like a felt sense, then it can make you crazy. It can make you cuckoo banana pants because you can't put into context what is indescribable. Like Yanko, Jamie, and myself have all had these experiences that we can never truly convey in language to you all. We can't. All we can do is encourage you to do the work so that when you have that feeling, you're like, oh, I get it, man. I get it. It's kind of like the dude in the Big Lebowski. You're like, yeah, man. Right. But that's it. And so, but it's trusting that journey and recognizing when people have those experiences, you feel their loving energy. Like you're just attracted. You're like, I don't know why I want to hang out with Jamie, but I want to drink his Kool-Aid. Or I don't know why I want to go to sing with Nana and Kerri, but like it's gonna be fun and it feels like a safe place to land, even if you don't know why.
And
Yes. It's so
yeah,
important.
and
Go
you
ahead,
don't
Yanko.
have to know, like the energy flows where it's supposed to go. Like, there's many different examples that I can give. Like it can be in a bus with total strangers and not knowing anybody, and off the bat you dislike this person, but you like this person more, and you dislike this other person and all that things. And kind of the same thing. I have experiences where I go to events, and for some reason, like I'm drawn to this person. I know there's deeper knowing, or like I know there's something that has to happen or whatever. And then I'll just go and be like, "What's up? Like, tell me why I'm here. What are we doing?" It's so good. I can't explain it. Like once it happens to you, you'll know. Like Kerri said.
Absolutely. And that knowing comes, like we've been talking about, in different ways, right? Kerri, you mentioned light language earlier, and that's a really great example of this. When I bring out light language, often the question is, Jamie, what language are you speaking? What are you saying? What does it mean? How am I supposed to be processing this? Am I supposed to understand it? And I'm like, slow down, take a deep breath. All you need to do is receive and trust that whatever is happening for you is for your highest good, because it's high frequencies of unconditional love. And sometimes I will be able to tell you more about it, what is happening, a little bit about language, and other times I won't. And that doesn't matter. I can tell you that my clients who experience my light language, whether they understand it or not, has nothing to do with whether it helps them. People will still laugh, people will still cry, people will still have some sort of flashback memory. They'll drop into another timeline. They'll just feel more energy through them. Right? We are feeling beings. Humans are feeling beings. We're designed to feel. And while we are designed with a form of curiosity for our creation, and that there's nothing right or wrong about understanding, understanding, and overstanding what is going on, that's not always the game. And sometimes when we fixate on that being the game, we create our own suffering as opposed to receiving what's
That's right.
possible and allowing to not understand. And right now we're in the age of Aquarius, right? There's a huge amount of unknown right now. And so a lot of us are feeling uneasy because things are shifting, and they're shifting very quickly. And even though a lot of these things that are shifting are things that humanity as a collective has wanted for a very long time from certain perspectives, there's still this uneasiness of like, what's going on? And we're in the process of remembering this is what we've been attempting to
Yep.
do for so long, and just allow it to
Well,
unfold.
James, I what I love that you said that I want the listening audience to really understand. He said that we're feeling beings, right? And I think so much of humanity still tries to bypass their feelings, or they're disassociated from them, right? Like for many years I was so numb to like I knew I was angry and I knew I was sad, but like there was no nuance in between. And so I really truly feel like we've got to give ourselves the permission, if nothing else, to feel our feelings, to feel our feeling. If that means locking yourself in the car and crying before you finish your gym session because you're not comfortable crying at the gym, cool. I mean, me and Nana will full on burst out into tears at this point, which is great because you see this big guy crying, and that gives other people permission to cry. But whatever you need to do to feel into your feelings. Yesterday I was working with a younger client, and they can't even identify their feelings because they've never been taught to feel into those feelings. So even if, like, this goes back to what we were saying earlier, if what we're saying is creating this resistance in you, if you're like, I don't know what nah, that alone is an indicator to get curious. Don't believe us. My job isn't to sell you on this experience. My job is just to encourage you to question your own experience and see what you can learn within that so you can hopefully start to free yourself from some of these cages, these confines that we've all three of us and everybody else have found ourselves in.
I agree. It's important. You're doing your own experiment, right? And that is what is happening. I mean, when we look at science, right, it's about repeating the same thing a little bit differently and observing what the changes are. And so you have the opportunity to play around and see what feels best for you. And you don't have to explain that to anyone. You do not owe that to anyone. So long as you are not living this life with an intention to harm yourself and others, you owe nothing. You owe nothing. We're all here together, so whatever you're not doing, someone else is going to be doing. Right? There's going to be someone else, another version of you that is having that experience and expanding. So whatever is happening for you is truly for you. And it's about what is happening within you because we all live in our own little world. We all do have both an individual and a collective experience. It's designed that way because that's why there's billions of us. If there weren't billions of us, then it would probably mean that we would not need to have billions of us. We wouldn't need to have all of these varied experiences. And you could have incarnated in any number of places and ways and times, and yet you're at a point where there's constant change. And so you get to choose, what are you going to do about the change? Are you going to be in fear all the time? Or are you going to get curious and offer yourself the opportunity to grow, to expand, to enjoy, and to find a new way of doing things? Because that's what we're doing. We're figuring out a new way. And that way is sped up because we're in a tech boom era. We're remembering how to access different tools and how to create different tools and how to utilize them to express. So I encourage you to express from your truest self. And going within is what's going to help you to do that. Because the more that you keep masking who you are and pretending to be some other role that was set for you, you are going to burn right out.
Yep.
You're going to
And then
burn
you'll numb
right
out.
out.
And like
Mhm.
that's a real thing. And that's why do you think there's 80%? And this, I'm shouting out Justin Wood again because Justin tapped me to help support him as he creates his course, The Student of Love. Jamie, you would appreciate that. Supporting people in addiction and mental health crisis. And the reality is we suffer because we don't know ourselves. We're so disconnected from love. We think we know what love is, but love is not attachment. It's not. Today is Nana's birthday, and I probably won't see him because his jam is hanging out with his siblings and Kuna at the crib. I can love that that's the experience that is going to nurture and feed his soul. And so we struggle when we don't know ourselves. And so however you figure it out, whether it's going through hypnosis with Yanko, whether it's going through Reiki with Jamie, whether you go through a shamanic healing with Gail Craft, or whether you get gutted like a fish by me because I'm just like, there's no filter and I kind of strip you down. Whatever it is that suits your fancy, find a tool, a support system, somebody who can help you start to hold space for you as you uncover your true self. And that's when you'll really break free from suffering. Like, you'll break free from that numbing out, that need to control, that fear, that isolation, and that attachment, like needing to hold tightly to something.
Well, you know how I always say you're perfect, whole, and complete, and kind of the same way I can say there's no suffering. I mean, you can see the suffering, but there's no suffering. Depends on like what perspective or lens you're looking at it and how you're looking at it. And then if you go higher, 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 it's just bliss. There's nothing going on. The party's down here. So this is why we're here. And I keep saying, and I'm keep seeing other people saying the same thing. Like, there's a line of people wanting to be on Earth right now, and you're blessed to be here. So enjoy it. Yeah, enjoy this experience.
And that, like, I get that. Yanko, I totally get that. But again, I mean, Jamie having severe medical issues, Yanko, like, I get what Yanko's saying, and yet I do want anybody out there who's like, what the hell are you talking about? I have to wake up and face this really hard experience. We've all felt that and we get it. And so I don't want you to think that we're minimizing that hard. It's just that we know that if you're willing to experience and examine, right, your internal landscape by yourself or with support, you're able to then get to that knowing that Yanko talks about, where truly you are blissed out, like where you can sit in this chair and really not need to leave it ever because you're just in this space of like, ah!
Exactly. But no, I have those experiences, but I don't let those experiences have me close down my feelings. Because, like, a lot of the times when you have that kind of thing, you close down because you're like, oh, I don't want to feel hurt. But you feel those feelings. And in that moment, there's no good or bad or anything. It's just feelings that are happening. And it's like, how do I say that? If you're watching a good show or a good movie and the main character dies and everything, and you feel those feelings and everything, and you see it, but in a certain level, it's just a show. It's not. It's not like like how it is. So it's kind of like that. And hopefully that'll explain it.
We see ourselves in others.
That's right.
And it's interesting that you brought up that show experience because it brings me right back to a very vocal experience for me where big Grey's Anatomy fan, and anybody who's a fan of that show knows that people, the main characters, they kill them constantly throughout the series. And when I was in college, one of my favorite characters died, and myself and my best friend at the time literally went into the quad, and we were virtually inconsolable, like just literally hysterically crying, to the point where our friends came up to us and were like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's happening? And we're like, they took George. Like,
He's
like,
gone.
completely losing it. And they're like, who's George? Like, is that like someone you're alluding to, or like whatever? I'm so sorry. And like after a while, they finally realized that we're talking about, the character on the show. But it's like, when you feel connected and attached to these very human, stories and these narratives that are being portrayed in a way that feels very real, it pulls on heartstrings. We start to feel into the possibility of those things happening, and these memories, you know, we, in a way, it's like we tap into our Akashic record, like our whole history of all of our being, and something activates within us. Or maybe you've had something similar happen in your waking reality, in this existence, that triggers that. But it's that empathy that we have, right? That empathy that we have for each other, and that compassion. And that compassion is so key for that unconditional love, because unconditional love does not mean I approve of every single behavior that you're doing, every single belief that you have is my belief. That would be conditional love. That's the conditions that we've placed on love. I only love you if is one of the most dangerous things that anybody can say.
And it's so prolific. It's so, yeah. But going back to what you said about Grey's Anatomy, what I love is that you and your roommate allowed yourself to feel those feelings. So my older sister passed away, and there was a very real experience where the cat was with my sister's dead body for a while. And so when the neighbor tried to bring the cat back into the apartment when we were there, the cat spazzed, right? I'm going through the motions getting through this experience in my life. Fast forward a few years, Nana, the two girls, and I were watching the last movie of the Hunger Games, where Katniss walks in and the cat comes through the window. And I lost my ever loving shit. Like, I was hysterically shaking and crying, right? Luckily, Nana knows me, so he was able to bear witness. My kids are younger, so they're like, holy crap. But because I didn't judge myself, I was able to heal the energy that was trapped when I was going through that experience, processing my sister passing away years earlier. And that's what we mean by feeling your feelings, guys, is it's not going to make sense. Sometimes you may rage out over the most seemingly trivial thing, and you're like, why the hell did I just get so angry that you put banana topping on my hot fudge sundae, right? But we don't know. But if you just let yourself feel it without judging it, then you've just released something that you needed to release, because if you didn't, it wouldn't have come up in the first place. And then to Jamie's point, where he's like, you don't have to know, just receive. You receive that and you let it go. And you let it go. Well,
That's
Jamie,
right.
this has been so much fun that I'm losing my voice. Something's coming up for me, so I appreciate that, Spirit.
Are you gonna do some light language?
I don't know, maybe. I wouldn't know. All I know is I am gonna selfishly take this minute to thank somebody who's so important in my journey, and that's Nana Ajaman, who turns 36 years young today, but is a true representation for me at all times of being fully expressed, unapologetically himself, and staying present in the moment. Nana, you dress up in random cosplay outfits. You show up and advocate for people's needs when they don't have the voice to advocate for themselves. You hold space for people who wouldn't otherwise feel seen or heard. And most importantly, when I'm in the throes of my own mess, you bear witness to me without ever asking me to be anything other than myself. And so for that, I love you immensely. And I am so honored to celebrate you today and all days, and to pop off and show them all tomorrow when we sing karaoke at Young Shane. So anybody who's a local, feel free to join us. We want joy. We're encouraging people to dress up if you so choose, or do whatever feels right for you. But Nana, I love you so much. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Happy birthday, Nana. I send you a message, but
Yeah.
I'll say it in case you watch until the end.
we won't watch much, but I'll clip it and send it to him. So
All right. Wonderful.
Jamie,
Wonderful.
you are welcome to join us any Friday you want a party, because you're dropping word bombs. And I really believe that, collectively we're in spirit showing up with love. And I'm so honored and privileged to love you and know you and call you a soul family.
Same
Thank
here.
you.
We resonate so much.
I,
It's been an honor to have you on the show, and you're welcome to come back at any time. We do have repeating guests, so yep.
I'm honored, and the feeling is very much mutual. And I love what you're saying, Gail, as well. Of unconditional love is namaste. The spirit in me honors, loves the spirit in you, and that's exactly why namaste is a phrase that resonates very deeply with me. And sometimes for those things that are unexplainable because it's so big. So I love you all unconditionally, those listening. And Kerri and Yanko, thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. And I wish you all a magical present
Well,
moment.
thank you.
And
Thank you. That was amazing. All right, everyone. Thanks for staying around and hanging out with us. And we'll see you next Friday. And the same time, same place. Bye.